Welcome back to Winning Hand. My name is Boomguy, and I have a special guest today, Andy R.
Hey, how's it going?
Hey, Andy R. Can I just call you Andy, or do I have to call you Andy R?
No, you can call me Andy. That's totally
Okay.
fine.
Can I call you R?
No,
Okay. That's weird.
Andrew, Drew, R, any of that? No, not my
Okay.
thing. There's
All
there's
right.
other people named Drew that are worth it.
Okay.
I'll be Andy.
You can call me Boomguy or Mr. Guy if you want to be formal. All right. So this is not the Winning Hand podcast. This is just the Winning Hand. So I want to explain to people kind of what we're doing here. You and I are starting a new series, which is all about decks and deck buildings. And we are calling it All Hands on Decks, which is, as everyone will, they're now laughing because they're watching this. This is clever. I'll give them a minute to catch up.
I think so. I think it's
Yeah.
clever.
I think it's clever too. We tossed a few potential names around. That's the one that stuck. So, listeners, viewers, in the comments, let me know what you think. Anyway, the point of this series is we are going to be kind of diving through Marvel CDB and talking about deck builders that don't get a ton of views, don't get a ton of, exposure. They're kind of lesser known, but the decks are not lesser. They are quite good decks, we think. So we're going to be talking through this, and the point is to look at decks that maybe you haven't seen, but you might be interested in, that we think you might like. And we're just kind of going to go through, and we're going to talk about what the deck is. If they did a write-up, we're going to read that. We're going to kind of look through it. Some of them have pictures. That's fancy. We're going to talk for a few minutes about what the style of the deck is, what kind of player this might appeal to. We'll talk a little bit about the power of decks. We are going to classify them with the Spike, Jimmy, and Timmy classifications, which we will discuss a little bit longer. And then we'll kind of talk about if we played them or not. We may not always play these beforehand, but hopefully we will. And at some point, if people want, we may play them on video and people can watch, which might be cool. What do you think?
That would be a ton of fun. Absolutely, especially to get to hear other people's experiences with these decks, and also just to get them out there for others to play, because there's more than just the big name decks that are out there.
Yeah, I think Marvel CDB is dominated by a few deck builders, and I'm not throwing shade at any of them. You maybe one of them, Andy, because you're a pretty well-known deck builder yourself. But again,
You're
this is
definitely
not
welcome
throwing...
to throw shade at me.
No,
But I get it.
I don't throw shade. We're not throwing shade at anybody, and
No.
the deck builders that are known, I think everybody who's watching this knows who I'm talking about, and they make really great decks that are tested and well thought out and well, researched and played and all that. But they have a million likes and they have a million comments, but they kind of dominate the main page. But we wanted to kind of dig a little bit deeper and talk about decks and deck builders that are doing cool things and are doing interesting things, but maybe don't get seen a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I definitely know, even when starting to build, it's nice whenever someone would actually put a comment or post it out there for other people to see, because I don't know that even my decks would have gotten seen if it weren't for some people just showcasing it.
Yeah. No, that's it. I mean, we're all in the same community, and the rising tide lifts all boats. So let's, shine some light on people who deserve it, who are doing fun things with decks. And ultimately, it's just an excuse to talk about the game we love, right? So
I love it. Absolutely.
This series will be pretty short. So this first video may be a little longer because we're talking about kind of what it is. But going forward, the idea is that there'll be like 15-minute videos. We just kind of get in, talk about a deck, show it off on the video, and then, give you our thoughts. And this is only on YouTube, so if you are used to hearing Boomguy on the Winning Hand podcast, that is still here. Those episodes are on YouTube, and they are also in all the audio places, but this is only here on YouTube, so this exclusive content, so welcome.
I'm excited.
All right. So before we get into the deck we're going to talk about today, I wanted to talk about this whole idea of the Spike, the Johnny, and the Timmy. So this is this comes from Magic the Gathering, and I have not played Magic the Gathering, at least not extensively. I tried it, bounced off. But this is something I think a lot of people are familiar with. So, Andy, why don't you tell us a little bit about the Spike, Johnny, Timmy?
Yeah, absolutely. So like you said, this is from Magic the Gathering. Their R&D department tried to find a way to figure out who would enjoy different types of cards and the different types of players of the game. And so You have your spike player who they consider the tournament style player, the one who's going to look at every ounce of efficiency around a card. Does it solve the problem? How can I recur it? How does it work in the greater scheme? And like every part of their deck is optimized for tournament play. I'm in it to win it. I don't care how pretty it looks. We're going to do this. Then you have the Johnny player. And this is actually the person who enjoys the thematics of something. It doesn't have to be the most efficient. It doesn't have to be the most optimized. It just needs to be a fun combo. Something that when they play it makes them feel good and does something toward the game. And then you have your Timmy player, who is the person who just wants to play the big thing, the flashy thing. Do one big thing, move on. So they're the ones who are likely to look for who's the biggest monster. And then how can I play that monster? Because then I'm going to feel really good about where this came out. And so the cards, they generally try to figure out, would this card be a spike level card? And so for me, I think of whenever we talk about how many resources to how many threat or how much damage this is going to do, we're kind of in that spike realm. When we talk about, how does a card like Chance Encounter work with my ally strategy? We're kind of in the Johnny realm. We start to get into spike when we're concerned about how expensive are those allies? Can we optimize the allies that we're pulling? And then you have your Timmy, who for me is your just event-based Hulk player. The one who just wants to do 13 damage, move on. Remove 5 threat, end a side scheme, move on. That's what they're going to do. That's what they want to do. And that's kind of your Timmy player.
Mm-hmm. So hopefully we'll go through these decks and we will be able to kind of classify the deck into one of those 3. It's not going to be always that clean, but the idea is that if you identify with one of those 3 archetypes, one of those 3 players, and we say this deck kind of fits into that category, you may then be interested and you may want to try the deck out. If you are a Timmy player and we say this is a very spike deck, you may think, maybe still try it. Like we're talking about decks that we like, but it may not resonate with you to the same degree, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so I will put some links down below to a little deeper walk into this guy, Mark Rosewater, and what he talked about with this categorization. So if you want to read more about that, there are going to be links down below. Please read away, but I don't want to spend all of our time talking about it.
It's a great read.
Yeah, it's really interesting, actually. I didn't know that much about it before we started this, so I read a little bit. I'll still lean on you as the expert here over me. But how would you...
you do make some pretty good decks. I do want to say that. But to anyone who does want to get into deck building, it is definitely worthwhile to read.
Yeah, how do you identify, Andy? Maybe we should say that.
Yeah, I split between the spike player and the Johnny player. So there are times where I'll build for a role and I will hammer that role, especially in multiplayer. If I'm going to play Justice, I want to make sure that there is no threat on the board at any point. And so I'm going to optimize that deck so that there's always a way to thwart. And so that's when I get into a lot of the spike. And then there's some times where I just see a cool or a fun combo, and that definitely appeals to me of wanting to build this thing out, whether it's the most efficient or not. Like when Warpath came out, I loved the idea of getting to do things on the villain phase. Did it necessarily matter or like affect the game that I did on the villain side instead of the hero side? Not as much, but it was fun to do.
Yeah, Warpath is a great example. I was just recently trying to build with him, and I just realized I could find almost nothing that wouldn't be just as good to play on my turn. Like, say I'm getting attacked, I could play it there, but like I could just wait like one card phase and then just play that same card, and it didn't really make a material difference. When Warpath was announced, I don't want to make this about Warpath, but when he was announced, I was very excited, and I thought like, oh, cool, this is going to do interesting things. I just don't know if it does, to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it really makes any difference. Maybe I'm just... viewers, please let me know if I'm wrong.
I do think there... I mean, we don't have to get into Warpath. If you ever would do an episode on Warpath, I'm in.
We should talk about it in a deck, yeah.
You can definitely... Yeah, to make it work means that you're really gonna Johnny it up, and you're just going to make that the source of your cool combos. Because otherwise, like you said, it's like, I don't know.
Yeah. Agreed. So I think for me, I am primarily the Johnny. I'm primarily the one who's building like weird, janky decks around like a single combination or a single card that I just think is cool, and that's kind of it. And I have so one of the decks that I published recently or not that long ago, and it was played by another content creator, Ray Plays Games, I think. I'll link it down below. It was an Iron Man deck built around Otto Octavius and recurring him as much as possible to ready my tech. And that was how I thought of the deck. And then I researched, I went on Marvel CDB, and I said, okay, how many Iron Man decks have Otto Octavius in them? The answer was 0 at the time of my construction. So I thought, okay, cool. I thought of a new thing. So I built this whole thing, and you make him Web Warrior, and you do this, and you do that, and you're recurring, and you're doing all this stuff. I think honestly, for minimal benefit that you like wouldn't have gotten just by playing Iron Man, or just playing better allies that were going to do more than just like ready a tech and draw you a card. But it was really fun. It was like a fun thought exercise. It was like, can this actually work and be a functional deck with this weird combo? I think it did work. Again, not perfectly, but that's the kind of stuff, that's where my head is at. And those are the decks that I really love. When I find a deck on Marvel CDB where I'm like, oh, this is weird. I've not seen this before. I've not thought of this rules interaction before. This is cool. I think a couple of months ago, or maybe last year when they changed the rules of She-Hulk, for example, there was a whole deck that went around with, they changed the rules, so when you can't stun someone if it's stalwart, or if the enemy's dead, that you don't lose her attachment that does extra attack. I'm not explaining this very well, but there was a whole deck built around it, and I thought, well, that's cool. That's someone who read the rules and was like, okay, now you're going to tell me it's probably your deck. I don't know. But it was like,
no, it's not.
They read, and it was very clever, I thought. So that's me.
It was fun because it did give Superhuman Strength just a new light in terms of a card in which I don't necessarily think of, but man, how fun was it to see and to then... Stalwart is usually not a villain that I would want to pick, and just by nature. But after that one, it's like, bring on all the Stalwart villains.
Yeah, agreed. There was... Okay, I don't want to talk about that. I have other decks I can think of examples, but I don't want to say them because let's highlight them in other videos.
Yeah.
Okay.
Love it.
So let's move on to the kind of... Before we move on to the deck, let's talk about how we are kind of defining these decks, right? And you thought of a cool way to kind of make it objective or less subjective, like what a smaller deck builder is. What was your suggestion?
Yeah, so it was definitely just looking at people who are under 3,000, because at least for me, when I go through the site and I see a deck builder who's under 3,000, for some reason, I feel just a little more on guard to looking at the deck. But I will say, so in January, dealt with some insomnia, so I figured I'd do it by playing a bunch of Marvel Champions decks, and ran into these people who were building at 50, their scores of 50 or 100. And these decks were phenomenal. I had a ton of fun with them. And so that to me seemed like a threshold that I related to in terms of how I looked at decks. And so that's kind of how approaching these is one of the things I'm going to look for.
Yeah. So we have that kind of as an arbitrary number. And I don't know about you. I have no idea what that score means or where it comes from. I mean, I guess you have more popular decks, but I couldn't tell you how you get to that number. I have no idea. As of this posting, we just looked it up. My number is 794. I don't know if I should feel good about that or bad. I don't have very many decks, and they're not super popular. So we're obviously going to look at all of my decks because that's what the series is now, because I'm under the threshold.
I'm excited to look at your decks. I still think we should pull a few out for sure.
You must be above it. You must be. I don't know. What's your number?
No. I don't know.
Okay.
Let's see.
Okay. I don't even know. It's too high. Couldn't possibly know at this point.
For what it's worth, I think it's in the 7,000s.
Whoa, jeez. 10 times mine.
I know.
Okay.
I'm just ready for it to be over 9,000, just so I can have the meme.
What meme?
Oh, it's a Dragon Ball Z meme. Well, now I feel nerdy.
I don't even know Dragon Ball Z.
That's okay. I don't either. I mean...
Okay, nice save. Okay, so some of these decks have gameplay, and if they have gameplay, we will link to them. If the creator of the deck plays it and they leave a link, we'll link to that, or if someone else plays it, we'll leave a link to that too. There is a pretty well-known, I think, guy who plays other people's decks. His name is, I think I mentioned Ray Plays Games or Ray Loves Games. What's his channel? I'll put a link down below. I don't remember exactly, but he plays other people's decks, and that's like one of his series. It's pretty cool. So if he's played some of these decks, I'll link him, or someone else has. And again, we may play the decks ourselves. I don't know. Maybe we'll get to the point where we decide to play some decks. That could be fun. 2-player decks.
I love it.
Or we'll both play the same deck, just 2-player.
Ooh, just to see how it'd go. Man.
Yeah, we'll just play the same thing. It's a mirror matchup. That sounds awful. We're not going to do that.
I can't imagine. If it's a pool deck, how
Oh, boy.
Oof, that'd be tough.
Pool is a whole vibe, and we'll get to that some other time. Okay, let's move on to the deck of the day. What do you think? Should we move on to today's deck? Okay.
I'm ready.
So you brought today's deck. This is called Nightcrawler Gunboat Justice by Castle Frank 47, who has a score of 780, so he's well under the threshold. All right, so since you brought this deck, why don't you kind of introduce it and tell me why you brought this deck?
Yeah, so this deck, I think, has a lot of unique, fun things that it was one of the first Nightcrawler decks to come out, and it was in Justice, and there aren't that many Justice Nightcrawler decks. And then this one explicitly isn't so worried about BAM, because it centers around the Alliance card, the new Alliance card, Gunboat Diplomacy. And so I just think, one, the deck builder did a great job. Also, you can see the deck builder comments on a lot of decks. Probably one of the most encouraging deck builders around Marvel CDB. And so a chance to get to highlight this awesome deck and to get more people to see it and try it out. Because one is, like I said, it centers around the Alliance card, which doesn't necessarily get a lot of love. Like, people are not generally fans of Alliance, but a lot of the newer Alliance cards actually are good because they work in both solo and multiplayer, because one is they don't cost 4 and effects are achievable.
So the idea of this deck is that Nightcrawler is going to defend the allies. So he's doing all the defending, and he has his allies to use Gunboat Diplomacy to thwart, but then also effectively do damage, right?
Right.
Using
Absolutely.
upgrades, mission training, and then using things like Justice Serve to ready Nightcrawler, Heroic Intuition. Okay, because he is, of course, an X-Men, so he can be used as part of this. I should show off Gunboat Diplomacy, which is, in case you don't know, Gun Diplomacy is a 1-cost Justice event that has Alliance, and it says hero action, attack/thwart, exhaust an X-Force character and an X-Men character, remove X threat from schemes in play, and deal X damage among enemies in play, where X is the combined thwart of the 2 exhausted characters. Whew, that's a lot of words.
That is, those are a lot of powerful words right there.
Yeah. Tell me why you love this card. I feel like a lot of people love this card right now.
It is definitely a great card, because to do damage spread and thwart spread together is rare, if not impossible. I think this is the only card that will spread both. And I will say, this will only get better once other Magneto cards come out. Like, I think of Children of the Atom that's going to come out that gives everyone every trait.
Oh, yep.
So now you can attach trainings to everyone. But in the case of this card and Gunboat Diplomacy in this deck, one of my favorite things is that it also has 2 cards that just sync well. One is Game Time, and the other is Bishop. So Game Time, if they have an attachment, you can ready and heal them. So you use them for Gunboat Diplomacy, use Game Time to ready them, and still get an activation out of those allies. And then Bishop, anytime you get attacked, no matter who defends it or what, like when you are attacked, Bishop gets a counter. And Nightcrawler loves to get attacked. So Bishop just gets to sit there. You can use his 2 thwart if you want, and then, just do 6 damage with the guy. Like,
he actually goes out of his way to
deck.
get attacked, right? Nightcrawler, that is.
Right.
He's bamfing for other people. So, like, he's just charging up Bishop, which if you put, mission training on him, he's extra hit points. You're going to get more activations out of him because he has 0 attack and he only has 3 health, and he takes 2 damage when he attacks, but you remove energy counters and increase it. So you could potentially get 3 attacks out of him, right? If math is right.
Yeah.
If you have the upgrade on him, you're going to get 2, 4. Yeah, you get a 3rd attack. So you could potentially get like 18 damage out of Bishop. That's crazy. That's crazy.
That's so good.
That's so good. And yeah, so there's not a ton of allies in here for a deck built around this gunboat diplomacy, which is a little surprising to me.
Yeah. That is where the use of chance encounter is a particularly good play. If you're not going to go with more allies, at least chance encounter can help you grab the ally you want. And in this case, because you never know whether you're going to get an X-Men early or an X-Force early, and you want the other side, chance encounter can make sure that, like, he's just making this deck builder is making it consistent that you can get the ally you need when you need it.
Yeah. Okay, so what kind of a player does this appeal to? Is this a Spike, a Johnny, or a Timmy deck?
Yeah, I think for me, my initial read of it was that it was a Johnny deck in that it's got this fun combo. But really, as I look at each card and how it all syncs together, this actually feels more like a Spike deck. Like, you're going to go out there, you're going to get a side scheme, put chance encounter, get your allies out within 2 turns, and then just start going all out on gunboat diplomacy. Like, it is an efficient deck.
That's interesting. Immediately I thought it was, of course, the Johnny deck, right? Because there's this weird combination. You have to find this event and you find the right allies and put them into play and do all these things. I didn't see a lot of Spike in there. Like, if Spike is the guy who's looking for winning, right? He's looking for kind of this ruthless efficiency. And gunboat diplomacy by itself is a pretty efficient card.
Right.
But, like, is this a deck you're going to bring to, like, a tournament? Like, obviously there's no tournaments in this game, but, like, is that what you're going to... I don't think you're going to bring this deck. I think this is a pretty solid Johnny deck, to be honest.
Yeah. So I do see, like, if you were to do solo Champions League with this, like, that's the closest I can think of when I think of competition within Marvel Champions. I do think that this will help you get the job done well. You're right that it may not necessarily be the most ruthlessly efficient, but the number of cards that sync into each other definitely gives it. Like, I think just looking through the deck, the only thing I can think of that's like, I don't fully know is Generation X, but it's definitely clear that the deck builder put in a side scheme so that there's always something to attach chance encounter to or to trigger Justice Served with. But other than that, I mean, it is a well-rounded deck. I do think it is very much a Johnny deck. I do think, though, it does stretch into the Spike side of things, just with how each card relates toward the goal of the deck.
I think, I mean, I can see maybe that's like, this is the pretty strong, like, Johnny deck that maybe has just like a pinch of Spike in there, right? Like, you're making your spaghetti sauce, you just have like a pinch of salt or something.
Absolutely.
That's my pinch. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's true. I think if you're the Johnny player who likes these kind of quirky interactions and combo decks, this is probably for you.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
In terms of deck power, how strong do you think this is? I'll let you go first.
Yeah. So I think this is a fairly powerful deck. Your gunboat diplomacy will generally be doing 4 damage and 5 to 6 threat removal. So I definitely think it's pretty powerful. I don't necessarily know if we want to go a number system or anything like that, but if you were to do it 1 through 10, like you have with some of the cards, I would put this at a 6 to a 7.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I think it's like a mid to mid high, maybe like a 6 if we're putting it on a power scale. It does feel vulnerable to anything that doesn't have a ton of side schemes, or with one way or another that's pulling out side schemes that are particularly bad. So I think that could be an issue. It only has the 3 allies, and while it does have chance encounter, like, chance encounter could just be at the bottom of your deck. Like, it may just be hard to find those, or they may get you may mulligan them out, and then if your allies go pretty quickly, you just really can't get them back very well. So that's one thing that I think I see. There's no way other than game time to heal those allies and keep them in play. I think I might have included like a first aid or two for a deck that seems so heavy on allies.
Yeah.
Maybe I would have skipped Heroic Intuition and maybe a Justice Served or two. Like maybe those could have been cut in favor of that. Just because if you want to use those as much as possible, right, and they're expensive, Hope Summers and Bishop and Deadpool, 3 to 4, you want to activate them as many times as possible. So I don't know. What do you think? What changes did you make here?
I definitely agree with you that I don't know that Justice Served. I get it. It's a way to ready Nightcrawler, but since he's already someone who enjoys a lot of readying, and this deck is labeled as solo only, so he is going to be Bamf defending for himself, and then will be ready for the use of Gunboat Diplomacy. So I don't know that you need the 2 Justice Serves. I think you'll run into the situation where one will be out, you'll draw the other, and then you have that max 1 per player that you're going to hit up against.
Yeah.
And First Aid is a great way to do good healing so that you feel more comfortable using your allies when you don't have Gunboat Diplomacy coming out. Because that's also one of the harder things of, even if you were to just replace the Justice Serves with the First Aids, you'll probably now always have a healing card within 1 to 2 hands because you'll have 5 of them. And that will make you feel way more comfortable with using your allies.
Yeah, because there may be turns where, right, you don't have Gunboat Diplomacy in hand, and you don't want to use the allies normally because the entire deck is built around Gunboat Diplomacy. So you maybe would save their activations, and there may be times when you just don't have as much to do. This is definitely one I wish I would have played. I will admit, viewers, I didn't play this before we started talking about it, but this is a cool one that I want to try. I have been a little underwhelmed with Nightcrawler so far.
Wow, that's so sad. I love Nightcrawler.
Really?
Man, yeah, I think he's so good.
Okay. I don't think he's bad. He hasn't quite clicked with me the way I thought he would. I find any kind of event-based hero just, can be hit or miss for me because you just, especially event-based heroes that have one of an event, like this is not great.
Right.
Teleport drop, I'm looking at you here. Like there's only one of them. So
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think
when
overall,
it comes to Nightcrawler.
Yeah,
just when it comes to Nightcrawler, I do think it is tough to feel good about any hero where you kind of have to think through your resource management, especially to do their hero ability. So with Nightcrawler, I know a lot of people don't like that you have to discard a resource or spend a resource in order to get a Bamf. So that means that you're having to either grab an enhanced or bust out the X-Jet if you want to hold your hand size. But one of the things that I do want to call out on this deck is while they do want you to Bamf sometimes, and everything is cheap enough for you to feel comfortable spending that, you also don't have to. Once you have your allies out, you don't necessarily need to always be Bamfing.
Yeah, I just find his Bamf economy to be a little wonky sometimes, and often when I was playing him, I found I wanted one more copy of Bamf, or I just wanted them to maybe work like Iceman's Frostbite, maybe be out of play and then I don't know. Maybe I need to play him some more. He hasn't quite resonated with me the way I thought he would. I was very excited. It just didn't quite hit for me. And we talked about him in an episode of the podcast, so if you're already on the page listening, you could go check that out. Okay, so then overall, let's wrap up here. I think this is a really fun-looking deck. It's a cool idea. I don't see a ton of Nightcrawler in yellow, so that's exciting. Johnny always resonates with me. This is what I'm going to play. What do you think?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So I have played this. I've loved playing it. I'm excited to get to put it out for others to play with because I think you'll have a blast with it.
Yeah. And Castle Frank 47, thanks for letting us check out your deck. And hopefully more people will see it and try it out this way. Well, that's kind of the first episode of this. It is a little bit longer than we want them to be, but we did spend a bunch of time talking about what this is going to be, kind of a discussion on the series. So hopefully this is going to be a regular series. Please let us know what you think about it. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you have suggestions, put those down below. But we are hoping to make this a regular thing where we talk about decks. So thanks for joining me, Andy.
Yeah,
and
thanks for having me.
This is fun. Yeah, of course. Let's do it again soon.
Deal.
All right. Thanks, everybody. See you next time. Bye.